Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Wave podcast here at the Culture Wave Media Network. And this has been a long time coming because we're back with the final part 3 of season 6 of Cobra Kai, one of Netflix's biggest shows, finally ending its crazy run on the network. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined with Ella Lambiazzi, who is back.
Hello.
Welcome back, Ella. And Mikey Peniston.
Hello, everyone.
It's our Cobra Kai crew. It's our dojo. And we're ready to break this down. So the last time we talked about this, when it was last on, was November of 2024. So it hasn't felt... was there a bigger break in between part 1 and part 2?
Yes.
There was, right? Like maybe a couple of months extra, right? Yeah, It was July to November. Then we had November to February. Because I was going to say, it didn't feel like it was as long of a break this time. But there was certainly a lot to kind of figure out where we're going to go. Because, spoiler alert, obviously we're going to talk spoilers in this. But at the end of part 2... we have a death, which is crazy. We talked about that a lot on part 2 and how it kind of upped the stakes for a lot of what was happening. In this part of the season, we have multiple deaths. So they obviously were able to up the ante, but kind of, Ella, I want to start with you and just kind of broad thoughts on what were your thoughts on, I guess, part 3 as a whole, because that's kind of what we're going to discuss mostly here, but also how they wrapped up the show in general. And because this is a show that's been on for how long? Do you remember when it started? What year it was?
2017?
2018. I have it actually right here. So 7 years this show was on, which is crazy in 6 seasons. So what are your thoughts?
I'm glad they were able to wrap it up and that they didn't choose to go with more seasons, because I just don't really think they would. Like, they'd just be milking it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they did a really good job in part 3 of wrapping up everyone's storylines. The only thing I wish that they did was maybe have there'd be like 2 more episodes. Like, I just feel like some of it was a little bit rushed, but as a fan, like, I loved everyone's ending. I feel like they all were done justice, and I'm interested to see like what potential spinoffs could come from this, as we were just talking about before.
Yeah. Mikey, what are your thoughts? Broad stuff.
I'm very pleased with how they wrapped it all up. It really could have went a lot of different directions with how all 3 parts kind of went. But I'm happy with how it ended. I agree, like you said, it was smart of them to not keep going with some more seasons. I don't know how many times we can take the same love triangles happening back and forth at this point. But I'm really content with this ending, and I'm excited to see as well what's to come.
Yeah. So I'm glad you actually brought that up, because this season doesn't really. It's every single season of the show has focused on some sort of love triangle at one point or another. They completely abandon that in this part. Yeah. It basically doesn't happen. They don't really have any romantic angles, but a lot of it has to do with kind of the personal relationships between all the characters and how they've overcome hardships. And they do it in this way where they're doing it all in like pairs. Like, they have everybody dealing with things in 2s, and it's for everybody. So you have obviously Miguel and Robbie, you have Samantha and Tori, but then you also have Samantha and Miguel. And then you also have Axel and his feelings for Samantha, Tori and Zara, Gianni and Kreese. Like, it's crazy. The Miyagi and LaRusso. Like, it's just constant the way they're doing it. But I actually think it works better for the way that the relationships were formed to break it down that way in this season. And I think that's why the last 3 episodes were executed so well in this. We were talking before we started rolling, Ella, about episode 13 in particular. And I think we're both in agreement. It's probably our favorite episode in the entirety of the series.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about why you felt that way?
I just feel like that episode was so heavy. Like, everyone, I feel like they cried at least once in that episode. Like, everyone got so emotional because some of their stories were coming to a close, like with Sam and deciding not to fight, and Robbie and getting his knee broken, and Daniel with his dream about Mr. Miyagi. And Kreese and Gianni, like, literally just so many things happened, and like, I literally just, my heart was like, oh my god, like, so many times with that episode. And I always say that I feel like episodes that are emotional hold like more of a connection, at least when I'm watching them. And I just feel like that episode did a really beautiful job, and everyone did so well acting, and it just made me feel like a lot. Yeah,
I agree. I think that like the acting got kind of upped in that episode. Sure. Like, we were talking before we started rolling, Mikey, right before you got here, but we were talking about how a big part of it to me felt like we've had those moments across the 7 years that Cobra Kai's been on where it's like, it's an emotional beat and they set it up with the slow motion and the music and you're like, something crazy's about to happen. But that felt like such a natural thing. Gianni and Kreese in particular for me, the Miyagi scene too, the CGI took me out of it, which we could talk about. But the Gianni and Kreese scene in particular and William Zabka's acting in that to me was like, oh my God, man. Like, this is a side of Gianni that we haven't seen. Like, you really don't. Like, that's all of his trauma and all of his emotion being poured out. And even seeing it from the side of Kreese, like, you don't really see that side of Kreese unless you're seeing kind of the flashbacks and what he went through in the war. So to see kind of his full circle kind of arc too with Martin Kove's character, like, I thought it was crazy. Did you feel similar with that scene in particular and kind of the parallels of what was happening in episode 13?
Yeah, I definitely mostly I want to talk about Gianni, just because like you guys said, it was a performance level that I feel like we have not seen, even going way back to the original Karate Kid movies. Like, this was that moment between him and Kreese. I feel like there were two. It wasn't just like that last initial moment where like they had like the breakdown, even like this, like when they were in the parking lot, that emotional moment as well. I feel like both just were so different than anything I've seen in Cobra Kai as far as acting. And it just felt real. And also there was so much that was like pent up to that. Like, again, going back to the Karate Kid, I love how they cut back to that scene in the parking lot again from like the older movies where it showed how much that really like hit for Gianni in that moment. So yeah, no, that definitely was real. And then to see what came out of it afterwards was really cool. I know we all knew it had to come back to Cobra Kai at some point, and so like that was the best way they could have done it. But yeah, no, just performance acting wise all the way around, I was a little taken out of with the AI as well with the Mr. Miyagi. But I agree that was like such like a nice way to end it. I do think that it's kind of crazy that he was all of a sudden like okay with it after that, after like weeks of like Mr. Miyagi, going crazy.
You talk about Daniel.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Like all of a sudden, like it took the one dream, and he was like, "Oh, you know what? We're good. We ain't got to fight." And so I don't know. I enjoyed it, but that was also a little kind of crazy to me.
Did you have something on that?
Yeah, I was actually just watching an interview earlier, and Ralph Macchio was explaining like the two parallels between the nightmare he has in part 2 of Mr. Miyagi, and then how now this dream, like the nightmare kind of like sent him down that spiral, I think, but this dream now wasn't a nightmare, and it ended up being like a better thing where they worked together and they were able to fight alongside each other, and how he said that kind of just that just lifted his character up. And I think that was the intention, like to kind of bookend like two dreams, like one good and one bad, to kind of just change his opinion. I agree that it was like pretty fast, but it was cool watching Ralph talk about it because he got so like emotional and like he just cares about this character so much. But I agree that the AI like was kind of crazy. I kind of wish it just like didn't show his face or something, and because like
they don't for a lot of it.
They don't for a lot of it, and
Yeah.
it looked really like it looked real. But then just because like I'm just like looking at his face, being like, oh, are his features moving like naturally? And no,
It was actually because we talked about the AI that they did for part 2, and I thought this looked a little better. Like part 2 was like really, really took me out of it. Like I was like, that looks not good, like at all. And I do think that in this one, like his features and his eyes seemed a lot stronger. But every time he talked, you were like, okay, this is not working.
His lips
like,
aren't moving the way they should be.
And part of it is also like, I'm sure Cobra Kai, obviously season by season, their budget probably rose a little bit. None of the people in this show are really probably garnering like $5 million an episode. Like that's not happening. You know what I mean? So I think that obviously they can go a little bit above average, but I thought like the way they used their budget was the explosion. I thought the explosion actually looked great.
Yeah, it did.
Which we can get into that later too. But I wanted to say one more thing about the Miyagi thing that you brought up. I agree. I think it was like quick in terms of how he was stressing about it for basically all of part 2, in the fact that he literally like leaves everybody and like goes off on a quest by himself, gets locked in a fucking dog cage. It's like, it's like, oh, now he's good. Like they're fighting the ghost. He's fine. But the biggest thing for me that I actually liked about the way that they wrapped it up, because that didn't like, if that would have been the real wrap up, I think I would have kind of hated it. But when his mother comes in with the necklace,
oh yeah,
and he has the realization of like Miyagi was just doing what was right in his heart, and like kind of being in defense of this treasure and this like novelty that meant so much to him that he then gave to Daniel's mom, and then it has like the full circle thing with the LaRussos. Like that to me was also emotional because I was like, man, this like really really wraps it up to like even the first Karate Kid. Like it's really great, and I think the only other show that evokes like that feeling of like the like the era of the 80s, like the way that you do the music and the overemphasization of like just how insane everything is Stranger Things. Like I think that Netflix kind of has their handle on like 80s, like they just know how to do 80s well. But I like the way that they wrapped it up with the necklace. Did you feel similar with that as well?
Was that in episode 13?
That was episode 15, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
I'll double check.
Was it the last one? Like 15 is in the last one?
15 was the last one, yeah.
Oh, maybe it was, but I don't know. That emotional scene was like really good too. Yeah. With the dream, if it just ended with that wouldn't have been as good. But the necklace, like, and then Sam bringing it back at the end when she's wearing it to Okinawa, or no, she wasn't wearing it to Okinawa. She was wearing the octopus necklace for her and Miguel. So never mind. But her like using that as she's going to Okinawa, like. That was really cool. I'm really glad that she's doing that.
I think that's cool too. I think that's probably the spinoff I'm kind of most interested in, but it's also because I just really like Miguel's character a lot, like Xolo is. And I also think like, this is no offense to, I think all the actors are great, especially like, I think they've all kind of grown in terms of their acting ability season across season, but Xolo to me has been like the strongest actor since 2018. Like he's grown with the character, and it actually reminds me a lot of what you brought up before. And I would love to, I haven't listened to a lot of interviews with him, but I'm curious, like, I think that the same, like Ralph Macchio obviously did like a lot of other things other than Karate Kid, but his legacy is held with Karate Kid. Like, I feel like that's going to be Xolo. Like, I think that Miguel was like such an awakening, and it was like, I don't know if Karate Kid was like the first big thing that Ralph Macchio did, or like literally the first thing he did. But like I felt similar with Xolo. Like, I don't know if he did anything before Cobra Kai, but like he propelled himself to like embodying the character of Miguel so well that I really liked the way he kind of approached everything. So that's the spinoff I'd want to see. But how did you feel about the relationships between, I guess, the foursome of the kids? Like kids, they're not really kids anymore at this point, obviously. But like Tori, Miguel, Robbie, and Sam. How did you feel about the way that they handled that this season and their own kind of paths, along with the Karate Kid stuff? Because there was a lot to wrap up with that franchise as well as Cobra Kai.
Yeah, there was just a lot in general to wrap up. But like specifically talking about the little foursome that we had going on here, because these four have been through it throughout the entirety of this show, right? I really thought it was perfect the way that they wrapped it up. It was cool that Sam and Robbie both still got their happy ending despite Robbie's injury and everything like that, and that they were able to still kind of do it together. So that was really cool. Likewise with Miguel and Sam, I feel like it's not really together, but they made the most out of it, which we saw in the end. And so I thought that was really cool. And it worked for the best. And to see, it was a really cool moment when Tori and Miguel, when they walked out representing Cobra Kai. And first of all, that moment was just super badass in general. But it was cool to be able to see like, oh wait, you know what? Like they, at some point in the show, like they dated and like they went through all that beef, and like the other two were in the crowd together, also just cheering them on. And like there's no issues. It's like everyone's just friends. And like that went for everyone, like Gianni and Daniel. I don't know why I forgot Daniel's name. Like everyone was just friends in the end, and like how it should have always been. And so I was really content with that.
I felt that everybody got like, which is kind of crazy to say, but I felt like almost every major character got like perfect closure with their characters. Yeah. Which is really hard to do with like an ensemble of, I mean, how many characters get like a full wrap up? You're talking about probably 8 or 9 characters, like between all the kids, Daniel and Gianni, Kreese, Terry. Am I forgetting anybody? I mean, again, like the side characters, like again, and we can get into that too if you want to talk about it, because I know it was one of the things you were talking about before we started rolling. But like Hawk and Dimitri obviously kind of get sidelined in this part. Yeah, they're a lot. Kenny is not in it at all. Daniel LaRusso's son has a few lines of dialogue, and now he's in Cobra Kai. Devin is not in it, essentially. So there's a lot of characters that kind of get, like, they kind of just drop off, especially following such a dramatically emotional part 2, where there could be like PTSD involved. There's ironically none of that, which is also kind of weird.
Yeah, like
right?
Daniel was the only one feeling something in like the first episode, and everyone was like, "What's wrong with you? Like, you're crazy." And he's like, "Well, a kid just died, so I feel like he kind of had a right to be a little off."
That's like, that was to me though, like, perfectly embodied the feeling I get when I watch Cobra Kai. Right? Like it's like Johnny being like, "I didn't get to live out my dream." And Daniel's like, "A kid died." It's like, yes, that's like what happened. Like, we watched it happen. Like, this kid is gone.
Yeah.
And you were saying before, like, episode 1 too, like, it kind of starts out a little slower. And they handle the death of, is it Kim? Is it Kwan, of his character and the repercussions of what comes of that. But it doesn't take them that long. Again, in terms of time, I don't know if we got like a time card.
It was like 2 months later, I think.
That's not enough time.
No, because like in the opening,
that's just not enough time. This kid is dead. Like, that's crazy.
I mean, to be fair, like
I was like, I'm gonna justify this for you.
I didn't like him.
No, of course not. He was an asshole, but like, he's dead. The character's gone.
There's so many people like on social media and stuff who were just like, Kwan, like, I love him so much. I'm like, yeah, he didn't deserve to die, but he was also going at someone with that knife. He was gonna like, he picked up the knife with the intent to like hurt someone, like, to kill. Like, I can imagine him stabbing like Robbie or Axel or something. So like, everyone's like so sympathetic towards him. I'm like, guys, like he was gonna kill someone. Like,
it is true. I mean, again, at the end of the day, like, that's so much of what you see in this show. Like, I mean, think about, what is it? Is it season 5 when they have the big fight at Terry's house, or is that season 4? Yeah,
that's crazy.
Everyone thought Chosen was dead, and we're like, "What's happening? He just got sliced with a samurai sword in his back." Like, that's, well, I feel like you feel similarly, right? Like, that's the kind of shit that you're like, dude, Cobra Kai never dies, right?
Yeah, no, it does not. It does not die. It definitely doesn't. Nor do they ever hold back. I just. It was on par with everything. It equally matched the explosion that, we got in the end. But I don't even know if we want to talk about that yet.
Oh, we can transition perfectly to that if you want to.
Thank you, because there was this really funny moment. Me and my mom were watching this together, because me and my family have watched this now together for like since the beginning, or since my sister brought us in. And so me and my mom were watching it, and my mom knocked on the first few episodes, and like she was awake for the first one, and then she knocked for the rest, and then she woke up like during that fight scene.
Wow.
And so I'm watching her, and she's just like, "What in the world is happening?" And then immediately the boat explodes, and she's like, "What the heck?" Like, and it just is so on par with what the heck is this show? Like, why do we have these grown men fighting, killing each other, blowing up boats over kids karate? Like, what is going on? And so I don't know. That's what I gotta say.
It just. Do you have something else on that?
I mean, there were before the season came out, there were rumors going around that Terry Silver was gonna blow up the All Valley. So I was, but
Terry Silver just calling him fucking bomb threads.
Yeah, which he was doing on the boat. Like, he was gonna send his guy to go plant a bomb.
Yeah.
And then that's when Kreese like randomly just showed up. I'm like, how did he like get on this yacht?
That's another. What a great point, Ella, that has not been brought up probably by anyone.
Because I'm like, is Kreese really outside? Like, he's on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Like, how'd he get there? Like,
that's crazy. I haven't even thought about the logistical possibility of how he got there.
I don't know, a boat, maybe a helicopter. Like...
They said we don't care. He's about to die anyway.
Yeah,
right.
Oh my god. Well, that's also part of why I love the show, because like. All right, so this might be, try to stay with me here. So like, I'm a professional wrestling fan. Like, this is the closest thing to me to like doing a scripted version of professional wrestling, because of how insane the ideas of this are, like all these things are, to just constantly elevate, but also be paid with such respect by the creators that like they care about the lore, right? Like they care so deeply about Karate Kid Part 2, Karate Kid Part 3. Like they care so deeply about all of those characters, plus building out the stories for the kids, that next generation of Cobra Kai, the next generation of Miyagi-Do. And seeing where we're going to go next, that's where I feel like we wouldn't feel that way about most other scripted shows, right? Like we'd be like, no, that's like a really big flaw. Like, how the hell did Kreese get there? But we're like, who gives a shit? Him and Terry Silver were fucking fighting to the death, literally. It was just crazy. Like, I thought that scene, I couldn't stop looking at the very obvious body doubles in that scene. I don't know if I was the only one.
I didn't notice in that scene, but I noticed it in some of the fights.
Okay, yeah. Well, so that scene in particular, though, like every single time Martin Cove like threw a punch and it was like from behind.
Actually, maybe I did notice.
His hair was like totally black, and I'm like, he's blonde. Like, he's literally blonde. It's like we can't like be doing this all the time. But I want to talk about the fights actually really quick too, because I felt that they do a really good job always of balancing kind of the emotional tension along with the fights. Season 2 or part 2 was extremely action heavy.
Yep.
And where I think that, not that they leaned on that too much, I actually thought it kind of, we were talking about that in our review, I'm pretty sure, that like we didn't see a lot of that in part 1, which was why I think we were underwhelmed, because we were like, well, what happened to like, we usually have set up and then fight and then set up and then fight. And that was just like all set up. And then we get all fight, and then we have like the perfect mixture in part 3, which I think is why, at least I feel, it's my favorite part. But I know I want to talk to you about how you felt about some of the fight scenes coming off of part 2 that was so action heavy.
I liked part 2 because of the amount of fighting. Like, I feel like if we went back and we all watched like the whole thing, it would definitely not feel that setup versus fight versus a mixture.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fights in part 2 because I felt like there was a lot of angst between all the kids, and I feel like it focused a little bit more on the kids, which I liked, because I feel like we kind of lost that in season 5 and maybe even a little bit in part 3, but I kind of liked that, I guess, because we were focusing on Daniel and Gianni and like how they're wrapping up their storylines and stuff like that. But I have to say, like, I'm a big Robbie fan, and watching him struggle so hard in part 2, like, I hate it. Like, I just really, like, it was hard to watch. Yeah. Like, how he just, I know we all didn't talk about it because I wasn't here last time, but, like, just watching him get distracted all the time just, like, killed me. I'm like, over what? Like, over Tori? Like, I hate her. So, like, why are you getting so distracted over this girl?
Yeah.
But then, like, as a Robbie fan, I was sad when he lost in part 3. Like, that knee break, like, oh my God, like,
destroyed you.
Oh, it destroyed, like, it literally destroyed me.
Ella screamed at the television.
Like, I knew it was gonna happen because just, I don't know, they're not gonna let him win. They never let him win. Like, he literally won nothing. Like, he didn't win any tournaments besides the captain's fight. But like, still.
I felt that, I agree with what you're saying, especially because like looking back, because there's been so many years of this show, I'd have to like, you're obviously right that I'm like not thinking about how he hasn't won anything, but he basically hasn't won anything. But I did feel like the wrap up for him with not only Gianni but also Tori actually was written really well, because it kind of perfectly reflected like the DNA with him, and that's Gianni, right? Like, did you feel that way too?
Totally. Yeah, that's why like I always knew he was like gonna lose, because like Miguel has to win kind of thing, like like for the plot, I guess. But at least like they did it in a way that really like suits his character, because when him and Gianni had that final like emotional scene in the locker room, like that is what like killed me, because he finally got that peace with his dad that he has been like fighting for the whole show, I guess, and like they said I love you together for the first time, and just that moment was so sweet. And he said that he wants to focus on all the good things he's won in his life, like aside from a tournament, which is what Gianni didn't do, and he ruined his life based on that. So I think that that's really great. And in part 1, I think him and Tori were talking about how they wanted to be in the podium together, and even though it didn't end up being that way, they're sponsored together, so they're gonna be on the podium plenty of times together, like in their future. Yeah,
and they have the parallel also of just kind of him being able to then embody this newer version of his father, being able to give love back to somebody else that obviously needs it. I mean, what she's gone through, I mean, losing her mom and all the shit she's been through, obviously. I just thought it was a good way to wrap up that threesome also, like that kind of part of it. How did you feel about the Robbie and Tori and Gianni stuff?
First, just kind of talking about the fights, just because I wanted to.
Sorry.
Now you're my 2 cents. I agree. Part 2 was like really good with the fights. I mean, like the last fight scene in general was like an Avengers fight, but I am really happy with the fighting that we got this season. It obviously wasn't. There were things that needed to happen that we didn't really. Like Robbie, I agree. It wasn't fun to watch that, but I am also a really big Miguel fan,
Yeah.
and so I knew it had to get there, and to see that fight with Miguel and like the callbacks to like every move that he
Parallels
learned,
were so good.
oh my
They do
gosh,
parallels really,
Really well.
really, really well in the
yes,
show.
100%.
There's so many of them. Like even with the scene of Robbie getting like in the locker room, that is a direct parallel to Karate Kid, where Daniel's like laying on the bench or whatever in the room, and Mr. Miyagi like does the hand thing on him. Like the angles are the exact same, and people have been like comparing them side by side. But yeah, in the Miguel fight, like all those like parallels just made me like, oh my god, like he's grown so much. Like this is so great.
Chills, like just chills, yeah. And like to see him still applying all those things that he's learned through every like season now at this point, and like this fight is just so cool. And like I also was like, I'll give Axel like a little bit of credit for not cheating and like kind of being like allowing like that moment to happen as it should have. But I really don't like Axel. Like I like the same way. I feel the same because I don't like what was the Cobra Kai, the kid that got Quan. I don't really like Quan either. But like to be honest, I'll put Quan and Axel on that same pedestal. Like they both were just like doing stuff that was, and I know it was like they were being told to do it, but like I don't know. Maybe it's also because Axel was the Hulk for no reason, and like
he really was,
right. Like why
he
did
was a machine? Like that's what they called him.
Yeah,
like,
and I was like, I don't know, but I was just really happy to see Miguel kick. Oh yeah, just beat him up the way he did. Yeah,
Mhm.
I like how they still have the parallels though, even with those characters and like their coaches, their senseis, like very much to like the other characters we've seen along the way. Like who's the sensei? Who's Axel sensei?
Sensei Wolf. And
Wolf is very similar to me. How you could either compare him to Terry or you can compare him to the Karate Bad Boy. I forgot his character name too from the Karate Kid movies.
Mike Barnes.
Mike Barnes. Like he can embody that. Plus you have like the older guy who ran the Korean dojo. Like he kind of is the exact antithesis of Miyagi.
Yeah.
Like literally almost beat for beat. So I think that that's cool how they kind of do things like that. But I understand too, like it's interesting because with the show, I feel like you go through ebbs and flows of like who you like and who you don't like because of the decisions that they're making. Because you need to keep the wheel kind of moving constantly. But like you were just talking about too, Ella, like what Josh Hill, John Hurwitz, Hayden Schlossberg, they're the creators of the show, all Jersey guys. So shout out to that because that's awesome. Kevin Burkhart's in this series this season also. Shout out Kevin Burkhart, Jersey guy. But that it's so obvious because I've heard interviews with them where like the same way that they talk about how like Kevin Feige with Marvel or like the Russo brothers, they'll like when they're like storyboarding a season or like a movie, they'll be like, okay, let's put all the characters on a board and let's see where we can go from here to here and here to here. These guys eat, sleep, and breathe Karate Kid, which is so awesome because like they care so deeply about what those characters were doing in their current incarnation. And it's now setting up so much in the future of the Cobra Kai Karate Kid universe going forward. I know one thing that I'm really curious about that kind of has to do with Cobra Kai, but also we're not really sure, is Karate Kid Legends, because Ralph Macchio is in it as Daniel, but Jackie Chan's also in it, reprising his role from the Karate Kid with Jaden Smith. And then we have Ben, I don't know if it's Ben Wong or Ben Wang. Do you know?
Oh, no, I don't know.
Okay, so I forgot how you say his last name, but it's Ben Wong or Ben Wang, and he's the lead as this new kind of trainee, but he obviously has a lot of skills, kind of. And that's a movie coming out this year that I believe these three guys are all executive producers on, so they have to have some sort of input going forward. Do you have any theories or ideas of how we get there? Because, like, Daniel is involved, so are we going to see other characters from this universe in there, do you think? Or, like, how do you think they're going to handle that? And then Ella, will go to you.
I do think I know like they did. I think they said that some characters aren't, majority of the characters won't appear. I do think that we will get maybe like a quick scene of Gianni, like a quick one. At this point, I think what maybe might even make some sense. I don't remember Jackie Chan's character's name.
Mr. Han.
Mr. Han.
Yeah.
Okay. So Mr. Han, I know that movie with him took place in China, but for whatever reason, he could end up in Japan. I don't really know where else the Karate Kid Legends takes place.
I can read that if you want. It's actually in the description of
yes,
the movie.
please. Read
It says the Kung Fu prodigy Li Fang is uprooted from his home in Beijing and forced to move to New York City. When a friend needs his help, Lee enters a karate competition. Lee's teacher, Mr. Han, enlists original Karate Kid Daniel LaRusso for help.
So he goes from Beijing to
New York.
So this takes place in New York.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
And so did the Karate Kid with Jaden Smith, right? Didn't it?
The Karate did it? No, it took place in China.
Okay, I didn't see that one, so I haven't seen it. I know we've talked about this. I've gotten the same reaction from you last time, but I haven't seen it.
Whoa, I didn't know. I forgot. I'm sorry. Yeah. But I think that I actually did not know any of this, so now I'm really rethinking. I really thought this took place somewhere else, so I was gonna connect it to Sam being in Japan and
that would have been cool,
right? But I don't know. Ella, I'm gonna pass it on to you.
Okay.
I don't know.
Honestly, I don't know much about this either.
Okay.
I feel like the Okinawa could be a good connection if somehow they do end up there.
I feel like that might be the end of the movie.
Maybe.
I have, like, a
yeah,
weird
like maybe
feeling.
like if Daniel's like a mentor or something, he'll take the new kids to Okinawa or something to like teach and to visit Sam to use it as like an opportunity or something, and maybe we'll get Miguel in that too. But I feel like honestly most of the characters are going to be mentioned by name. So like I don't really know if maybe Gianni could be in it. I think he'll definitely be mentioned or something. But like I don't think characters like Tori and Robbie would be in it or anything. Maybe like on a TV screen or something. Like
that'd be cool.
I don't know, but I definitely like Ralph Macchio. I just watched his like half-hour interview of them like talking about their experience on the season and stuff, and Ralph Macchio was like teasing it, and he's like, it seems like he's really excited about it because originally for some reason I thought he didn't have like that big of a role in it, but
I think that changed.
Yeah.
I feel like he wasn't supposed to be a big part in it. Like I remember when they initially announced this movie, and I think they said that he was in it, and they were like, it doesn't have really anything to do with Cobra Kai. And everyone was like, what do you mean it has nothing to do with Cobra Kai? Like, you can't just make a separate Karate Kid movie when you've now built out this whole universe around the ideals and what came of the 80s movies. So it didn't make a lot of sense. But I don't think it's going to have like major connections to it. I agree with you. I think that Johnny's going to show up at some point because I think that so much of like the same way that Ralph Macchio was so associated with Karate Kid now, it's like that's also kind of where William Zabka's at this point. Like it kind of just flipped because this whole story was revolving around Cobra Kai. So I think he could show up, and I do think that'd be cool if he kind of showed up in Okinawa in the end too. Anything else in particular that like was at the top of mind that you want to talk about, or do you want to talk about maybe favorite moments from the part 3 in general?
Yeah, we could do that.
What do you have?
Oh my god.
You want me to go to Mikey first?
Yeah, go to Mikey.
Okay.
Oh, no, you said that like I had.
I'll go.
I do have a moment.
Okay, go ahead.
But there were few little moments that I just again really appreciated with this that were such nods to previous things that we've seen. There was the fact that first let me start with this. This is like probably one of the biggest things. I was genuinely surprised with the twist that we got in the end of this because I was expecting it to just be like an Axel Miguel sort of thing, and then to have it go to the senseis. That I think was so perfect, just because this really was Johnny's story, like we have been saying. So to have that moment, and then I think that this is and this is why I brought it up. I just love this moment so much. The whole Daniel teaching him of like like when I did that thing, like you came at me, like you were supposed to do this, like move backwards, and then for Johnny to have picked that up. And like the little look back that he did, there was just something about that, and having Daniel train Johnny and all of this that was so like, it just hit the heart, right? Because it was like, oh snap, like thinking back to that first movie of the Karate Kid, and now we're watching this, like Johnny get trained by his opponent for this. It was just so beautiful, and I feel like it was storytelling done right. So I just wanted to purposely bring up that moment, and then also just the Johnny Wolf fight, just because it just hit home. It really did.
So good.
Yeah. I thought that the Johnny Wolf fight too, which I'm happy, like I was worried when they showed the flashback of him and Daniel's fight that he was going to do like the Karate Kid pose. But then it's like, when you think about it, it's like Johnny would never fucking do that. Like Johnny would think to himself,
He's made fun of it before.
He'd be like, that's pussy. He'd be like, that's pussy shit. Like, which is so funny. My biggest thing, and I think that's why I really like part 2 going into part 3 the way that it did, was because part 2 focused so heavily on the kids, where we were coming out of part 2, we were like, why the fuck are they making these decisions for Daniel? Like, just felt like he was having, again, like this insane crisis, and we couldn't even follow what was happening. Meanwhile, this part really, I would say like 75 to 80% of it really focuses on like the core Karate Kid characters and them having these interactions. We obviously already brought up the Kreese and Johnny one. I mean, Johnny winning the fight, and then like him chosen and Daniel all coming together and hugging, like that was great to me. The biggest one for me, which might be one of my top 3 favorite moments in the history of the show, and I'm surprised because all my favorite moments are usually Johnny moments. It's a Daniel moment, but it's Daniel literally saying to Terry Silver, "Cobra Kai never dies." Like having that full wrap up of like, oh my god, and then him wearing like a Cobra Kai gi, like was insane imagery. Like it's just something where you're like, I can't believe that like something that would have seemed so disingenuous in the beginning of the show being made, they brought us to a place where it was like, oh my god, this makes total sense. And the fact that Johnny's now picking up on like what Daniel is teaching him, it's like, oh my god, it's like such an emotional thing that it makes you like at the end, like I literally in the second to last episode, I was like standing up watching it. Like I was like, this is awesome. Like I was like, the way that they're doing this like makes me feel so good. And it's how I felt when I watched the first season, because I was like, oh my god, like I can't believe that they're bringing like they're making a sequel series from Karate Kid, and like it's revolving around Johnny. Like how are they gonna? And they just kept building and building and building. But those were some big moments for me in this part. Obviously, was there anything that you thought of? Okay.
Well, first the end of like part 3 felt a lot like season 1, and I feel like season 1 and 2 were like the best so far of the whole series. And like I'm really glad this part felt like that. Like it gave season 1 energy really well. And I feel like a lot of, like, recently, it's kind of strayed away from being about Cobra Kai. And Cobra Kai has been the bad guy and stuff like that. And I love Miyagi-Do. Like, Miyagi-Do is the, like, dojo I would choose, personally.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that they were able to bring Cobra Kai back, because for so long we focused on Johnny learning Miyagi-Do and, like, leaving his Cobra Kai ways. But seeing Daniel, like, really embrace being in Cobra Kai because he cares so much about Johnny and trusts Johnny so much, like, that development was definitely, I agree, like, one of the best parts of this part. And when he said to Terry, Cobra Kai never dies, like I was like, oh my god, like look at Daniel changing, and the gi, like seeing him just in a Cobra Kai gi. And when Johnny won, I think my favorite thing that he said was, "You're all right, Lawrence." Just like when Daniel won and Karate Kid won, Johnny goes, "You're all right, LaRusso." And just that like callback was really like, oh my god, like this is so perfect.
Yeah, it's awesome. Last thing I want to ask before we get into scores. So we've criticized highly throughout this season that they did this in 3 parts. We finished the whole season now. My personal opinion, I'll start to not put anybody on the spot. I think that they could have probably cut 2 or 3 episodes from this and made it one consistent flowing season. I do understand the business side of it, which I think I've also talked about, where like they want this to be water cooler conversation for a longer period of time. The thing that I think is like unfortunate with it is that I just don't necessarily think that this show needs that. Like it's such a big property, and we are assuming, but like I think rightfully so, like they're gonna do some sort of spinoff with the show. Like the show is too big, people care too much about the world. I mean, I'm repping a Cobra Kai t-shirt. Like Netflix, like they get a lot of money from the show, like obviously when they were able to acquire it from YouTube. So if it was up to me, I would have probably cut a good chunk out that we didn't necessarily need. There were like some fun moments at times, but it was like, was that necessary? Certain things. I would have made this probably like a tighter, maybe 12 episode season and make some of the episodes a little bit longer. That's how I personally feel.
I agree.
Okay.
I feel like I liked the split because it kept you more excited for longer, but I don't think 3 was necessary. Like 3 parts was necessary. Like I wish that they stuck to splitting it in half, like they've been doing with a lot of other shows. Because then that would like keep you like waiting for a while. Like if the first like 6 episodes, say if they were doing 12, came out in July, and then the rest of it came out in November, like that would have been perfect.
Yeah.
as much as I'm like excited to still like talk about it and stuff, I wish it just like ended sooner because I don't know, like some people got really sick of waiting, which on social media made people leak the whole of part 3 really. Because like I see a lot of that on my TikTok and stuff, and I was spoiled for a lot of it before the show even came out, and I was so mad.
Dang.
Yeah.
But then like people in the comments were like, "Stop spoiling it," and a lot of people were like, "Well, they shouldn't have waited so long to bring it out," and I was like this is like ridiculous. Like I don't know, but also I guess that makes sense that people are getting so impatient because of how long we had to wait. So I don't know. I agree though. I think 12 episodes would have been better. I just wish they made and they made them like 45 minutes each or something. Yeah. Because some of them were still like in the early 30 minutes and stuff like that. So I don't know.
Michael,
I think I disagree.
Okay.
I think I am content with what we have gotten. Just because I feel like I wouldn't have said that last part 2. But I feel like the way that they ended a lot of these stories, yes, I feel like there was a lot of fluff in there, but I don't know, I feel like certain storylines were ended so perfectly that maybe you needed that fluff in order to get to where we got. And I don't know, it might take a few rewatches to really like figure out if that's truly true or not. But I don't know. I just feel like I'm so content with a lot of what we got in this part that I just feel like everything that we needed to get everything that we got and to get to where we are right now. And so yeah, I don't think I'd change it.
It's fair. Yeah. All right, it's time for scores. We have to give a score for the full season. We have to give a score for the series as a whole. Okay, so we'll start with the season, obviously. I'm gonna go with for the season. I'm gonna go with an 8.5. I think that if there wasn't as much fluff and it was a tighter season, I could see it being a 9.5. There's just certain things where I was like, okay, I don't really know if we need that, and it's also like one of my favorite characters in the show is Hawk. And like I feel like we don't get a lot of like closure with his character, even though he's a side character. But the way they handled a lot of the Karate Kid stuff, I think got this score higher for me, especially in part 3. Like I think part 2 going into part 3, the way they handled it and actually having that divide of the kids comparatively to the adults, which I guess would work in the part favor, like having it in separate parts, would get that there for me. I'll wait on the series. I'll give the series. We'll go around and do the season first, and then we'll go to the series. So what would you give your score for season 6 as a whole?
I think I'd go with a 9.
A 9?
Honestly. Yeah.
Okay.
I did like a lot of the fluff. There was some of the fluff that I didn't like, but I don't know, some of the moments with the characters that were just like silly, like in the beginning of the season when they were trying to train Robbie with the crazy like VR set they made, like that was like silly, but I liked it because like it's been so like heavy lately that just like moments like that I really did like. And this compared to like season 5 and season like any like maybe even 4 and 3 like is significantly better. So that's why I would give it a 9.
Okay,
Mikey.
I think I'm gonna give it I was really teetering on the 9 weight, but I think I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I really liked a lot of what they did. There was fluff, and like I said, I'm not gonna go back on what I just said. But I do wish that we did see a little bit more storylines. I'm content with like the main character storylines that we got, but there were like those side characters that we've now brought up a lot that I feel like it would have been cool to see a little bit more. I really enjoy like a character like Kenny, or when we talked about this, but I feel like. And we said this too before the actual record, how a lot of these characters really got a lot of the time taken away that they shouldn't have gotten taken away, and it would be cool if maybe those characters got some spinoffs.
I feel like that's maybe where they're gonna trend.
Yeah. And so if they were to go that direction, then I would be really content. Maybe, I don't know, it's not all of them needed, but that's my series.
All right, as a series, I'm going to give it. It's very solid 9. I think that there are obviously seasons that fall a little bit lower of expectations based on what they built things up to be. I love kind of the little engine that could with the show, that it was like the first ever series on YouTube Red, which is not even a thing anymore. And I posted our clip on that. Like, it's just so interesting to me that like YouTube, which is like probably the biggest platform to watch anything now, like weren't successful when it came to scripted originals. Yet one of the biggest Netflix series of all time now wasn't originally brought to them, and they were the only ones that were like, yeah, we'll take this. Like nowhere else did they bring this Karate Kid spinoff led by William Zabka, and a company was like, yeah, we'll take that on. Like Netflix was like, no, like you guys are going under, we'll buy it from you. Like totally Netflix move. But I just think that they were able to do so much with the show that a lot of other creative people weren't capable of doing. Like they took us in so many different directions, and they made stars out of this show, like young rising stars when it comes to actors. Like this makes me want to see more from Ralph Macchio and William Zabka and Martin Kove, and like I want to see these actors do more, and Thomas Ian Griffith. Like I want to see them do more things because of this. And I think that's like the big thing in my heart, where it's like sometimes you'll see an actor that was like in a big movie in the 80s and you're like, wow, that person was like really talented, like they really like have skills as an actor, and then like decades go by and it's like, where have they been? And they're not given opportunities. So even though it's IP driven, I still think it's really cool that they were able to do what they did. And I love this show. It's a show that I will definitely go back and rewatch. It's like one of the most rewatchable shows ever, I feel like. And I also love the communal aspect of like, you can watch it as 20-year-olds, you can watch it as teenagers, you can watch it as 60-year-olds. You could like, I also watched the show with my family because of the parallels of like the way that the 80s stuff was comparatively to Cobra Kai. So I'm going to give it a 9 overall as a series, and Cobra Kai will definitely be missed. So Ella?
So I was going to give it a 9 too, but after you just talked about like how much like it meant to you and stuff, I think I'm going to go with a 9.5 because I don't know, the show just ever since I started watching it I guess I started watching it when it came onto Netflix. It just meant so much to me, and my dad was like, oh my god, you have to watch the show based off the Karate Kid, and I was like, okay, I guess. And when I watched it, just I don't know, I felt so connected to all the characters and watching them grow throughout the seasons, and seeing all the actors come together and everything. Like the actors mean so much to me, and the cast, like watching their interviews and stuff like that, and everyone just, it seems like it was such a fun environment, and learning about like everything they did behind the scenes with the fight coordinations and stuff like that. Like that has been another aspect of the show that I've loved watching, like all their behind the scenes, all their interviews, and I've just been doing it for so many years now that it's just like resonated so much. And I don't know, I just this show's meant a lot to me, so I think that's why I'm gonna give it a 9.5.
That's awesome. Michael?
Yeah, I think I'm going to match that 9.5. I feel like with Cobra Kai, everything you guys have said is spot on with the show. There's no show really that I've seen in today's day and age as far as like spin-off sequel of a older thing. I feel like that has hit it right while also paying such homage to the original. And like honestly, I have not seen that. Most spin-offs are terrible in that came from that past. And so really kudos to them for tackling it and doing it that way. The storylines that we've just gotten throughout it, they've been crazy. We've talked about how nuts they are, but they've still managed to like keep us on the edge of our seat throughout it, whether it's been good or bad. And so I feel like it's just really such a good show. The creators know what they're doing with this, and I would love to see it continue. I would love to see this world continue. Not only that, but I feel like we don't have too many martial arts shows like this. You know, if you really want to watch something with a good martial art choreography and all of that, then I feel like most of the time you have to look at, you know, more foreign film. And a lot of people might not really know how to do something like that. And so it's nice to have, I feel like Karate Kid always kind of represented an Americanized version of that. And so it's nice to be able to have that again. And it would be cool to have more martial art type shows and movies, you know, and to kind of blend those styles, you know, the foreign and the American. And so 9.5.
They also kind of have a parallel at the end of the season with what you were just saying too, where all the kids are lined up outside of Cobra Kai wanting to do karate.
Yeah.
And so it's obvious that the creators of the show have a deep love for martial arts in general, which is really cool. But this has been our review for season 6, part 3, the wrap up of Cobra Kai. Those are all our scores. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the ride along with us. If you guys want to, give this video a like. If you can, comment your thoughts on the season overall, some of your favorite characters, some of your favorite storylines throughout the whole season, the whole series, obviously, and then this part in general. What are some potential spinoffs you guys would want to see for this world going forward? And also, you guys can follow us on all our social media, all down below in the video. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're on Threads, we're everywhere. And we got a lot of other stuff we're covering for you guys on the channel right now. So a lot of stuff for you guys to be interested in and to check out. So just signing off, I'm Darian Scalamoni.
I'm Ella Lambiazzi.
And I'm Mikey Peniston.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.